It's been over 3 decades since Suzy Lamplugh seemingly vanished off the face of the earth.
Suzy Lamplug's whereabouts is still unknown.
Despite several witnesses and a key suspect, the case remains cold. Through most of the case, one man remained that key suspect, a serial murderer with several cases of sexual assault attached to his name.
The man who killed Shirley Banks.
With that key suspect not expected to become cooperative anytime soon.
Confess as they deny.
The case remains all but unsolvable. Today we take a look into the final hours of Suzy Lamplugh and the mysterious man she went to meet before she disappeared with no trace. Susanna Jane Lamplugh was born on May 3rd, 1961, in Cheltenham, England, to Paul and Diana Lamplugh. The third of 4 children, Suzy grew up in a loving and supportive family environment alongside her siblings Richard, Tamsin and Lizzie.
There was something about Suze that was, she had a charisma.
She was charismatic, witty, and had a natural ability to connect with those around her, which later played a key role in her career in real estate. Suzy attended private school in London, where she was a popular and active student, participating in various extracurricular activities that reflected her outgoing nature. Her leadership qualities were evident during her school years, and she was popular among her teachers and fellow students. After completing her education, Suzy didn't immediately follow a conventional career path. She craved excitement and new experiences, which led her to work as a beautician aboard the QE2 cruise ship for several years. This role suited her perfectly, as it allowed her to travel the world, meet new people, and enjoy the fast-paced, ever-changing environment of life at sea. After her stint on the QE2, she sought out a career that would provide the same level of excitement and engagement. Upon her return to London, Suzy made the decision to transition into real estate, a field that appealed to her need for independence, personal connection, and a fast-paced work environment. She quickly secured a position as a negotiator for the well-established estate agency Sturgis & Sons in Fulham, southwest London. Her natural charm and ability to connect with people served her well in this line of work. She lived in a flat in Putney, which she shared with her roommate and close friend Nick, and was deeply involved in the London social scene. Suzy's friends recall her as the life of the party, someone who could effortlessly brighten up a room with her laughter and warmth. Her confidence and optimism for the future were evident to those around her, and Suzy was seen as a rising star in her office. She had ambitions not only to succeed financially, but to make a name for herself as a trusted and successful real estate professional in London. Her disappearance in 1986 shocked those who knew her, not just because of the tragedy itself, but because it was so unthinkable that someone so vibrant and full of life could simply vanish. The search for answers in Suzy's case would capture national attention and leave an indelible mark on the country. July 28, 1986 began as a seemingly ordinary day for 25-year-old Suzy Lamplugh. She woke up and started her routine as per usual. That morning, Nick noticed nothing out of the ordinary. The two exchanged a brief conversation before Suzy left for work.
She left the estate agents in Fulham, London, where she worked, at 12:30 p.m. one Monday to show a client a property. According to her diary, he was called Mr. Kipper. There's been no sighting of Suzy Lamplugh since. At the sinister-looking house that Suzy was trying to sell in Fulham, number 37 Shorrolds Road, came the first sighting.
Among her planned activities for the day was a meeting with a prospective buyer, noted in her diary simply as Mr. Kipper, scheduled for 12:45 p.m. at 37 Shorrolds Road, Fulham. There was nothing particularly unusual about this appointment. Meeting potential buyers and showing properties was a routine part of her job. However, it would be the last recorded appointment Suzy ever attended. At approximately 12:50 p.m., a witness recalled seeing Suzy standing outside 37 Shorrolds Road, seemingly waiting for someone. She was reportedly seen with a well-dressed man, though the details provided by witnesses were vague. No one could have known at the time that this would be the last confirmed sighting of Suzy. Later that afternoon, Suzy was due to return to the office to attend other appointments. However, by 5:30 p.m, when Suzy had failed to show up, her colleagues became increasingly concerned. Calls to her home and attempts to reach her by phone went unanswered. Her manager, growing worried, decided to call Suzy's mother to check if she had heard from her. When Diana confirmed that she had not, the alarm was raised and the police were contacted. Suzy was officially reported missing that evening.
At night, we found her car at 10:01, and thirdly, that she hadn't been seen since.
At 10:00 p.m, police found Suzy's car, a white Ford Fiesta, parked on Stevenage Road, just over a mile from the property at Shorrolds Road, where she had been meeting Mr. Kipper. It was found unlocked with the keys missing, the driver's seat pushed back further than would have been comfortable for someone of Suzy's height, and her purse still inside. The sight of her personal belongings, left untouched in the car, sent chills down the spines of those who knew her. Suzy was meticulous and organized. The idea that she would have left her car in such a state, especially with the driver's seat adjusted for someone much taller than herself, seemed highly unlikely. This discovery prompted a full-scale investigation into Suzy's whereabouts. Her case was immediately treated as a potential abduction due to the strange circumstances surrounding her disappearance. Police began canvassing the area for witnesses, attempting to trace the identity of Mr. Kipper, but there were few leads to go on. A man had been seen with Suzy, but the description provided was too vague to identify him with any certainty. He was described as well-dressed, in his 30s, with dark hair, hardly a distinctive profile.
Which police later admitted had been flawed. Suzy was declared dead, presumed murdered, in 1994. Now police are digging in this field in rural Worcestershire after a witness reported seeing a mound of earth at the scene around the time she vanished. The meadows several miles from this disused military barracks at Norton, which was searched by a team of police officers in December 2000.
Over the following days, extensive searches were carried out in the surrounding area. Helicopters scanned local parks and rivers, while officers conducted door-to-door inquiries in the hope of uncovering new information. Despite these efforts, there was no sign of Suzy, and Mr. Kipper remained a mystery. The lack of CCTV in the area further hindered the investigation. As days turned into weeks, the case gained significant media attention. Suzy's face was plastered across newspapers, and her story became the subject of widespread public concern. For her family and friends, Suzy's sudden disappearance was both heartbreaking and terrifying. She had been a beacon of life and energy, and the fact that she could vanish without a trace left those who knew her grappling with shock and fear. As the police continued their search, hope for her safe return began to fade, but the need for answers persisted, both for the family and the investigators, who were determined to uncover what had really happened to Suzy on that fateful day. In an effort to gather more information, a nationwide appeal was launched. Television shows, including Crime Watch, aired reconstructions of Suzy's last known movements, hoping that a member of the public might come forward with critical information. Several witnesses came forward, claiming to have seen Suzy with a man near the property at 37 Shorrolds Road. However, these descriptions varied, and none provided the level of detail needed to identify a solid suspect. Despite the careful forensic analysis of the car, no significant fingerprints or traces of DNA were found to point toward a suspect. The absence of Suzy's car keys and work keys added another puzzling layer to the case, as it suggested that whoever had driven her car might have taken them with the intention of concealing their involvement. With no substantial leads and the case growing colder, the police began to explore the possibility that Suzy may have been the victim of a serial offender. The investigation turned its attention to known criminals with a history of violence against women, particularly those operating in London at the time.
Disappearance. A man was living in a day release hostel just outside the gate of Wormwood Scrubs Prison in London. He was coming to the end of an 8-year prison sentence for rape and robbery. His name was John Cannan.
Cannan had been on parole shortly before Suzy's disappearance. He had been in jail for his attack on a pregnant woman in front of her own mother and toddler, as well as 2 robberies at the time. From his previous crimes, it was known he had a history of violence. In addition, part of his MO was luring women using false identities, sometimes pretending to be a businessman or a state agent, a tactic that fit with the Mr. Kipper scenario.
Cannan is a liar. He is a cunning, evil man, and I personally believe that Mr. Cannan is Mr. Kipper.
Moreover, it was revealed that Cannan's nickname in prison had been Kipper, since he was known for always falling asleep in prison, adding further weight to the theory that he was involved in Suzy's disappearance. He was also known for being sharply dressed in a manner similar to the way witnesses described Mr. Kipper, and even the police drawing resembled him.
Cannan and inmates recollect him saying that he would go to the wine bars in Fulham, that he had met a girl down there. He was interested in buying a property in the Fulham area.
Despite this compelling lead, no concrete evidence could be found to link Cannan directly to Suzy's case. Although police searched multiple properties associated with Cannan and interviewed witnesses who had seen him around the time of Suzy's disappearance, nothing substantial materialized. The case remained speculative, with Cannan denying any involvement. In the absence of physical evidence, Cannan was never formally charged with Suzy's abduction, though many investigators remained convinced of his guilt. Even so, there were many strange coincidences, such as the fact that Suzy frequented the same bar as Cannan, the Prince of Wales. Items from Lamplugh were also later found by staff, including a diary, checkbook, and a few cards. Someone claiming to be a police officer called the estate agency she worked for, claiming to have that checkbook at some point before the disappearance. Lastly, red roses also arrived at the office from a mystery admirer, a man fitting Cannan's description who was also seen attempting to peer through the window. As the investigation stretched into months and eventually years, Suzy's family never gave up hope of finding her or discovering the truth about what happened. The police maintained an open file on the case, but the trail went ice cold. Occasional new leads surfaced, but they led nowhere. And as time passed, it became increasingly difficult to uncover new information. Advances in forensic technology in the 2000s prompted the police to re-examine items from the original investigation, but once again, no breakthroughs emerged. Suzy Lamplug's disappearance remains one of Britain's most baffling, unsolved cases. The investigation into her case, though thorough, failed to provide the answers her family and the public so desperately sought. The mystery surrounding Mr. Kipper, the lack of forensic evidence, and the elusiveness of potential suspects have all contributed to the enduring enigma of what happened to Suzy on that fateful day.
Do you believe that Suzy is still alive?
I don't expect to hear a phone call now, no.
Oh yes, she has been presumed murdered and she has been declared dead after 10 very long years of allowing Suzy to now fly free.
Oh, we get letters all the time, we still do. We've had thousands altogether.
While the Lamplugh were grateful for the police's help, there were several instances that they fell out with one another. At the very start of the investigation, Suzy's picture portrayed her with brunette hair to the public, which was more recently dyed blonde. Also, several important lines of questioning were not followed, such as a man who saw someone fitting Cannon's description disposing of a suitcase in a canal.
And the man who saw, who he is absolutely convinced, absolutely 100%, that it was John Cannan that was carrying this suitcase with great difficulty and depositing it in the Grand Union Canal, that man was never interviewed.
It was a lorry driver who claims the man was dragging a large suitcase at around 5 a.m. along a towpath next to the canal in Brentford, West London. Seconds after Cannon passed his line of sight, the man heard a large splash and saw Cannon running away. This would fit the method in which Cannon allegedly disposed of his other victims. The lorry driver would make a total of 3 attempts to report this to investigators, 2 of them after he took it upon himself to go to the trial, so he attended his subsequent 1989 trial at Exeter Crown Court to confirm his suspicions. The witness would unfortunately succumb to a heart attack before he was actually questioned. Determined to honor her memory, her family channeled their grief into a cause that would ultimately help protect others from a similar fate. In December 1986, just months after Suzy's disappearance, her parents, Paul and Diana Lamplugh, founded the Suzy Lamplugh Trust. What began as a small family-led initiative has grown into one of the most prominent organizations dedicated to promoting personal safety in the UK. Diana and Paul Lamplugh believed that if individuals could be more aware of their surroundings and the potential risks, they could better protect themselves from harm. In this way, the Trust aimed to address the gaps in personal safety that Suzy's case had so tragically exposed. It developed safety guidelines and training programs designed to educate professionals on how to reduce their vulnerability to potential attacks. This included basic safety measures such as always informing someone of your whereabouts, trusting your instincts when something feels wrong, and avoiding isolated locations when meeting clients. These measures became standard practice across many industries, particularly in real estate, where the Trust's influence has been widely acknowledged. The Trust also played a significant role in addressing stalking and harassment, issues that, at the time of its founding, were often overlooked or minimized by law enforcement and the general public. Through lobbying efforts and advocacy, the Suzy Lamplugh Trust pushed for stronger legal protections for victims of stalking. Diana Lamplugh worked tirelessly to promote greater awareness of the psychological impact of stalking and the dangers it posed to individuals. The Trust's efforts contributed to the creation of the Protection from Harassment Act in 1997, a landmark piece of legislation that provided victims of stalking with greater legal recourse. The Suzy Lamplugh Trust also campaigned to introduce stalking risk orders. These orders aim to protect individuals at risk of being stalked by allowing for early intervention by the authorities even before a crime had been committed. The Trust's focus on preventing violence rather than simply responding to it after the fact represented a significant shift in how personal safety was approached in the UK. The Trust's work has also extended to schools, where it provides educational programs aimed at teaching children and young adults how to stay safe in different environments. In recognition of their efforts, both Paul and Diana Lamplugh received honours for their work. Diana, who became the most public face of the Trust, was awarded an OBE, Order of the British Empire, in 1992 for her services to personal safety. Diana's work not only honoured her daughter's memory, but also left a lasting legacy that continues to benefit others to this day. Although Paul and Diana passed away in 2011, their vision lives on through the work of the Trust, which continues to advocate for stronger protections against violence and harassment. The Trust has expanded its scope to address emerging issues such as online safety, cyberstalking, and the risks posed by new technologies. It remains a key player in shaping policies around personal safety in the UK, and its impact on legislation and public awareness continues to be felt today. For the Lamplugh family, the creation of the Suzy Lamplugh Trust was more than just a tribute to their daughter. It was a way to ensure that her legacy would be one of hope and protection. This next section demonstrates the complexity of cold cases. You may be surprised to hear the amount of times this single case has been reopened and re-examined. Advances in forensic science, new witness statements, and ongoing public interest kept the case alive. Periodic reviews of the investigation would spark renewed hope for the Lamplugh family and the public. Investigators found a single fingerprint on the back windshield of Suzy's car, but it was too smudged to be matched to any suspect. One of the most significant developments occurred in 1994, nearly 8 years after Suzy's disappearance. The case was reviewed by a new team of detectives who re-examined the original evidence with fresh eyes. The renewed investigation led to a deeper look at potential suspects.
Police in Bristol are now very concerned for the safety of Shirley Banks, who's been missing since Thursday night.
John Cannon was examined closer. He was being investigated for being connected to Shirley Schultz Banks, a woman who was abducted just 1 month after being married to her husband.
The body of the missing Bristol woman Shirley Banks has been found in a forest. The body of Shirley Banks has been found. It was discovered in a remote area of woodland in Somerset.
A man, John Cannon, is in custody awaiting trial for her murder.
Her body was dumped on Quantock Hills. As a sick joke, he left her in a place known as Dead Woman's Ditch. Investigators considered the possibility that new forensic methods might reveal traces of evidence that had been previously overlooked. However, despite these efforts, no breakthroughs were made, and Suzy's body remained undiscovered. In the early 2000s, renewed interest in the case brought more attention to Cannon, who remained the prime suspect in Suzy's presumed abduction and murder. During this period, police conducted several searches at locations linked to Cannon in hopes of uncovering Suzy's remains. One of the most publicized searches took place in 2003 at the home of Cannon's mother in Sutton Coldfield. The police spent days searching the garden and surrounding area, believing that Suzy's body might have been buried there after her abduction. Despite the thorough search, no evidence was found, and the investigation hit yet another dead end. In 2010, nearly 24 years after Suzy's disappearance, the case was once again reviewed as part of Operation Anagram, a large-scale investigation into the crimes of convicted serial killer Peter Tobin, who hid his victims' bodies under a church. Tobin, who had been convicted of multiple murders, was being investigated for his possible involvement in other unsolved cases, including Suzy's. Although Tobin's name had not previously been linked to the Lamplugh case, his known pattern of abducting and murdering women led police to consider the possibility. However, after reviewing the case, detectives found no direct evidence connecting Tobin to Suzy's disappearance, and the theory was ultimately dismissed. As the years passed, other potential leads continued to emerge, only to be discounted upon further investigation. In 2018, a new search was carried out at a property in Sutton Coldfield, the same location previously linked to John Cannon. This renewed effort was part of the Metropolitan Police's ongoing cold case review. Investigators used modern ground-penetrating radar technology in the hopes of detecting any disturbances in the soil that might indicate a burial site. While the search reignited public interest in the case, it ended without any significant discoveries. Throughout the years, Suzy's case has remained in the public eye, with periodic appeals for information and television documentaries that explore the mystery of her disappearance. The Lamplugh's fight for justice continued until the very end. Paul and Diana Lamplugh remained vocal advocates for reopening the investigation, hoping that one day the truth about Suzy's disappearance would be uncovered. Sadly, both Paul and Diana passed away without ever learning what happened to their daughter. Diana's death in 2011 marked the end of an era in the family's public fight for answers, but their legacy continues through the work of the Suzy Lamplugh Trust, which remains committed to protecting vulnerable individuals from harm. Despite the challenges, the Lamplugh case remains open, and Suzy's disappearance continues to haunt the collective consciousness of those who remember her story. The question of what happened to Suzy Lamplugh has become one of Britain's most enduring mysteries, and while there have been many theories, the truth remains elusive. For Suzy's family and the public, the hope for closure endures, even as time goes on. The main suspect, John Cannon, remains in prison, despite being given the chance to appeal for parole. As of 2024, he is currently 70 years old. What are your thoughts on this case? If there are any other cases you'd like us to cover, please leave them in the comments and subscribe for more true crime cases.